Yo, what is going on, everybody? It's your boy Marshall Live, and we are back again in the Storytelling Academy. You guys, I have got a brand new lesson for you today, and it is there's only 7 types of stories. And in today's lesson, I'm going to break down the 7 types of stories or plots that there are when it comes to storytelling. Now, really, these 7 types or these 7 plots, right? These 7 stories, every story is a variation of these 7 story templates. And why I want you guys to learn this is because I want you to understand that when you get these 7 templates, when you understand how these 7 stories work and what they are, now we can think about events in our life, whether it's something that's happened to us or a story that was told to us, and then we can think, okay, what template can I put this in so it makes enough sense to persuade or influence my audience to take the action that we want them to take in business. So again, you guys, we're using stories as tools to influence our buyers, right? But we can use these for anything. Stories to influence our kids, to influence our spouses, to influence our parents, so on and so forth. And when you guys really understand the architecture that goes behind these 7 stories, these 7 types of stories, it's going to make you such a better storyteller because you're going to have a format to how to tell these stories. So let's dive into this right now. I'm shooting this on my laptop, which I don't usually do, and I don't have any lights up in my studio. So the video quality of this is a little bit, but I'm going to shrink me down right now so we don't care about that. And let's hop into this, guys. So I'm just going to get real small. And actually, I think today I'm going to put me over here. Yeah, I'll put me over here today. And actually, you know what? No, I'm not. I'll put me up here today. Let's put me up here. Okay. With that being said, let's come over to Keynote. Let's make this bad boy big, and let's get into it. Because today's lesson is all about there's only 7 types of stories. And again, when you guys know these 7 types of stories, you're going to see that every story of all time is a variation of these 7 stories. All right? And I say stories, but we're going to also what I'm going to refer to as plots, right? Every story is a variation of one of these 7 stories or plots. Okay, so plot number 1, overcoming the monster. Again, you guys want to take notes, if you want to write these down, go ahead as I go through them, but they're listed right below as well. Okay, so plot number 1 is overcoming the monster. Okay, so it's just like it sounds, you guys. It's the hero learns of great evil and it goes on a journey to destroy it. Okay, now look, maybe you had this really nasty English teacher in 5th grade, Mrs. Smith, and she was just so like, and all the kids were scared of her because she was this lady with these big, thick glasses and evil looking face, and she almost hissed when she talked at the kids, and she would snap at them, right? And your biggest thing was you wanted to have some candy, and it was she was so against it. And Mrs. Smith was out to destroy and take anything that didn't belong in class, but you rose up for the greater good of your classroom and you snuck the candy in. And like, you get it, you guys? Like, it can be as tiny of a story or as big of one as you want. Like, the hero learns of great evil, sets out on a journey to destroy it. That's it. The protagonist would be the kid. The antagonist is the evil English teacher, and he or she is setting out on a journey to destroy the English teacher, right? Like, let's look at some examples in some movies. Like Star Wars. Luke Skywalker, the Jedi, right? They set out to take on Darth Vader. They set out to take down the evil force, right? Ghostbusters, them versus the ghosts. War of the Worlds, Tom Cruise versus the aliens, right? I know there was a book and a movie before that, but that's an example, okay? So the first type story plot then, okay, is overcoming the monster. The second story plot is rags to riches. Now this is one that I actually tell in my brand a lot, and I'm going to slowly kind of be transitioning out of a little bit, but there will always be a rags to riches component to my story because that's what happened to me, right? So the hero starts out poor. It could be in health, wealth, love, and or happiness, any combination of those, and then ends up acquiring some or all of those things, okay? So in this plot, the hero of the story, they're just down, like they're poor, like I said, in health, they're poor in wealth, they're poor in love, they're poor in happiness, or maybe all of them, right? Maybe they're poor in all of them. And what happens is throughout the story that you tell, they end up leveling up. Pretty straightforward, okay? So examples of this in movies are Rocky, right? Rags to riches. Sly goes from just nobody working in the or in the butcher place to, almost beating the world champ, arguably beating the world champ. Aladdin, perfect example, right? Our boy Aladdin, from Prince to from a street rat to Prince, and then obviously Pursuit of Happiness with Will, based on the true story with Will Smith, where he goes from broke, down and out, like freaking sleeping with his son in a subway bathroom, right? Trying to peddle these machines to having a goal, staying persistent, staying driven, believing in himself, and then going on to make millions of dollars. So again, rags to riches. Plot number 3, The Quest. I love the quest stories. These are these epics, right? These are the ones that are like telling this big quest. And it's usually when the hero and companions, and I put companions in parentheses because sometimes it doesn't have companions, but usually a quest story has companions. So let's say the hero and companions set out to acquire something of importance or to get to a location of great importance. Okay, so I love these things, and they can be something silly. I mean, like even a comedy like Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle, right? Like that's a quest, and these quest movies or quest stories can come in many forms. So let's take look at some more examples. A quest would be like Lord of the Rings, right? The Goonies, Stand by Me, or Indiana Jones. These people are setting out on a quest. These storylines are setting out on a quest with your hero, and on this quest they're going to overcome. Like I said here, on this quest, they're going to overcome threats. They're going to overcome challenges. They're going to overcome problems on the way, and then that's where they're setting out to accomplish that great thing. Whether it's to gather something of great importance, right, or if it's to get to a location. Like Lord of the Rings, they're trying to get to a location, trying to get to Mordor to destroy the rings. In Indiana Jones, they're trying to find the lost Ark, right? So you guys get it. Plot number 4, Voyage and Return. Okay, so again, what I want you guys to think about as we're going through this lesson is I want you to think about what in my life has happened where I can take the details and I can format it into this kind of a template. So Voyage and Return. For example, let's see. The hero goes to a strange land and or place, and after overcoming threats, returns changed with a new experience. So for example, my Voyage and Return story could be the time that I left to go to Southern Illinois University when I went to college, right? I had a full academic ride, and I was only down there not even a semester. I dropped out just before the end of first semester, but I came back and completely changed from that experience, right? Same thing with a few years later. I'm in California. I get married, and I have to go back to Illinois. End up getting divorced right away. And now I'm stuck in Illinois. And it was like this crazy thing that I couldn't get back out to California for like 2 years. And that was a voyage and return, right? Because when I got back out here, that was when my life changed. And I was like, you know what? I'm never going to let that happen again. And so let's take some examples of some movies. Wizard of Oz, right? Voyage and Return. Dorothy goes on a voyage to a strange land, and then she comes back after an experience a changed person. Alice in Wonderland. One of my favorites, Back to the Future, right? And we could break down Back to the Future when it comes to storytelling in so many different ways. Like it's such a genius story, and we'll break that out throughout the lessons. But yeah, so these are some examples. Okay. Story number 5 or plot number 5 is comedy. Okay, comedy. Now look, I know when we think comedy, you're just thinking, oh, ha ha, but it's a little bit more than that because comedy is for some reason 2 people can't get along, which creates all sorts of antics. They eventually figure it out. They eventually figure it out in the end, though, and it's usually around one central event that happens, right? Now, comedies are usually something sad, right? It's almost something sad. But when you're telling a comedy story, it's really about a sequence of events that almost creates confusion, where you're just like, oh my gosh, it's almost like you're on edge. It's almost cringeworthy, right? Because the heroes just has so many things happen to them. The 2 people can't get along, 2 or more people, and these antics are just like, oh my gosh, you're like, this is just a ridiculousness, right? And then it usually ends up being something sad, and then almost like almost like a rebirth, which I don't want to give it away, but that's one of the next story types, right? But that's how comedy works. So let's take a look at some comedies, right? Dumb and Dumber, Blazing Saddles, 40-Year-Old Virgin, right? These are comedies that for some reason 2 people just couldn't get along, creates all sorts of antics, and then they figured it out in the end. And these stories are great. It's lighthearted. It's supposed to be a lighthearted story. So when you're telling comedy stories, you might be going, well, Marshall, how does that fit into business or branding? Excellent question. And what I want you guys to think about when you guys are telling these stories for your brand or your business is I want it to be a lighthearted feel of how the customer, the audience can get to know, like, and trust you, right? It's that rapport building story. You tell stories of comedy because you want to make yourself as relatable as possible to your audience. So when you can tell a silly story that's a comedy, that's funny. Like, for example, I could tell a story about the time I met Grant Cardone, and I was waiting to see him, and I don't know why I was like all pumped up and like people, dude. When he walks into a room, it's just like it's so much power exudes from this man. It's just everybody stops and it's just focused on him, and everybody's coming up to him, and they're all doing the same shit, like, "Oh, Grant, can I get your picture?" Yada yada yada. And I don't know why, but I like as soon as it was my turn, I walked up to him, put my hand out, I go, "What's going on, Grant?" I said, "You're a bad, bad motherfucker." And I was like, "Oh my God." I said, that's what I had to say to Grant Cardone the first time I met him. But yeah. So anyways, see, that's a comedic story that I just told you I can use in my content or in my brand storytelling or to a client, right? That's going to build rapport. So don't underestimate the power of telling the comedy story inside of your brand, okay? Plot number 6 or story number 6 is tragedy. Now, the tragedy stories, well, let's first cover what it is. Tragedy. The hero's character flaw or great mistake becomes their downfall. Their demise evokes pity at their mistake and the fall of a good character. Now, for example, how does this going to work in branding? How does this work in marketing? Well, first, let's just take some looks at some examples. Like tragedy stories are things like Romeo and Juliet. Tragedy stories are Titanic, Brokeback Mountain. Okay, these are stories of tragedy where the person who you didn't want to die, the character who's good fundamentally, the main person, there's something tragic happened to them and we lost them because of a great mistake that they made or because of a flaw that they just couldn't get over, couldn't fix. Now, as that pertains to our brand, there's not going to be a lot of times when tragedy really fits into it. However, me personally, Marshall Gillen, I have a for-purpose business. And my for-purpose, like this is true, like my business is a for-purpose business. And as a for-purpose business owner, I believe that I want to give a portion of all the money that I make back to a cause or back to a charity, back to something I believe in. And for me, that's my thing is suicide awareness. So I don't want people to kill themselves. And one of the niches that I decided to focus on that has a lot of problems with us is human sex trafficking, and specifically with the kids, and especially as a kid because I didn't have the structure I needed in my life from the father figures that I needed, and I wasn't like molested or raped or sold like slaves like these children were, right? So what I can just relate to is that story. So for me, and why I'm telling you this is what is it for branding for you guys? Why would you ever use a tragedy story? You would use a tragedy story when you want to do some sort of a fundraising, charity, brand awareness for this kind of a thing. So you're going to want to, if you have guys are giving back to a charity like I do, like if you guys give time, if you guys give that, and it's for a for-purpose business, I use tragedy stories not to manipulate people, but to share the story that like the vulnerabilities of what's actually happening, what's going on in the world, and what it is that people are experiencing. And I use tragedy stories for that, so I can relate that emotion to these people, and then they can they can choose to get involved or not. So that's how I use tragedy stories. That's one example, but that is one of the 7 fundamental story types. So you should know it, and if you guys should all be doing some sort of giving back in some way. Like that's how I feel. Like you should all be developing for-purpose businesses. If you're in this training right now and you're watching this, doesn't matter if it just came out or if it's a year from now, you should reach out to me if you want to know more about it. Okay, and that's something completely separate. Didn't mean to go there, but plot. And then the last plot or the last type of story that you guys can use are rebirth stories. And these ones are really, really great. And especially when you can formulate it in a way that's really, really engaging for the audience because it gives them that feeling to go, oh my gosh, okay, I can have that same rebirth. So this is like a tragedy, but where the hero realizes the error before it's too late. So let's, again, my story and how I use it for as an example is my attempted suicide, right? I had a flaw that I was refusing to fix, and I had a flaw that I was refusing to fix, and it almost became my downfall. and I tried to make it my downfall. But I somehow survived, right? And I realized, oh my God, I need to change my life. I need to change my ways. And that was my thing. Before it's too late, right? This is like a tragedy, but where the hero realizes the error of their ways before it's too late. So thank God I did, because that woke me up to take the next step, to get help and to keep asking more questions and growing, and then eventually getting to where I'm at today. So rebirth stories are great, but look, it doesn't have to be an attempted suicide. It could be anything. I could use the Southern Illinois story about coming back as a rebirth story. So I don't want you guys to think, oh my God, it has to be something just tragic, because it doesn't have to be something tragic. That's just something that happened in my life, something I was very, very ashamed and embarrassed of for many, many years, until I realized, that people are also going through and struggling with this. So that's why I started telling my story. So this is my mess is your message kind of thing, right? This is the story underlying the rebirth, is how can you turn that mess into your message? We all have a rebirth story, and our rebirth story really should be our brand story, our origin story. That's the story type that we want to talk about, is that rebirth, because really what everybody's looking for in life is a rebirth of sorts. They want this, they want that next level, they want to become better, they want to become healthier, they want to find better love, they want to find better relationships, they want to make more money, right? They want to have greater significance and impact. So you guys getting clear on your rebirth story, what was that defining moment in your life, is going to be really, really great for your brand, for your talks, for your presentations, for your books, for your podcasts. This is where you guys start. So some examples of rebirth stories that you guys are familiar with are Beauty and the Beast, right? That's totally a rebirth story. He has something tragic happen to him. He becomes the Beast. He's got a spell cast on him, and then he has to find out and become somebody new to get out of it, to break the spell. Same thing with Christmas Carol. We find Ebenezer Scrooge, who's miserable, right? He gets visited by the three ghosts. He has this experience, and all of a sudden he has this rebirth. And Mean Girls, had to throw that in there. AKA, can't help it, one of my guilty pleasures. Your boy Marshall Live loves Mean Girls. I want my pink shirt back. I want my pink shirt back. Little movie reference for any of you who love that movie out there. And so those are some examples. So again, you guys, what to do next with this lesson. Think of events in your life that fit one of these plot types and just plug in your details. Like literally, it's that simple. Don't make this any harder than it has to be. I just wanted to show you 7 story types so you know how to tell stories, because we know that it's just science. When we are told stories, we know that the sensory cortex reacts a certain way, which engages our brain, helps focus, memory, retention, all that stuff, right? So just knowing how the structure of one of the 7 stories go, it's going to help you be a better storyteller, so you can actually, have more efficiency when you're telling your message to your audience. All right. So I hope you guys got some value out of this. Make sure you take a look at the content below, and I'll see you guys in the next lesson.